Go. Now Fox News contributor Dr. Mark Siegel writes in a USA Today op-ed that it is risky for Democratic presidential candidates to make similar promises. Dr. Siegel, who's also professor at NYU Langone Medical Center, joins me now.
Sandra, good morning.
Dr. Siegel, what's the risk in that promise?
Well, with him, the risk was that he would win the Lie of the Year, PolitiFacts 2013, for saying you get to keep your plan. The risk for politicians now is that patients out there know that this isn't true because they all go through it. You're even in an employer-based system. I lose patients every week who are no longer part of a plan my practice accepts. And sometimes I say goodbye to patients I love. Last week, I got a patient from one of my mentors, a teacher who I really look up to and admire, but he was no longer in the plan that his patient took. So he switched to me, and I was honored by it. But the point is, the system is in flux. Employer-based healthcare system, plans are always changing, doctors are always changing. Medicare and Medicaid, many doctors are not taking it anymore, so you end up scrambling around trying to find a doctor.
Let me give you an example of some of the promises that are out there. If you like your employer-based plan, you can keep it. If you have private insurance, you can keep it. That's former Vice President Joe Biden in Iowa last month. A few days later, Senator Kamala Harris said that with Medicare for All, you can keep your doctor. So these promises are being made. You say that's not possible.
Well, I'd like to keep the employer-based healthcare system, by the way, but in terms of Vice President Biden's statement, that's absolutely untrue because, as I just said, the plans are changing. The tiers are changing. The networks are narrowing. They're widening. I get added to plans all the time I wasn't on before. I get dropped from plans I like. That causes you to lose your doctor and to lose your plan. If you're trying to get your plan extended another year, you may have to change. In terms of what Kamala Harris says, let me tell you something. Medicare for All. In countries like Canada or Australia, here's what it looks like. You might get to keep your primary care doctor, but there's a doctor shortage, and you may be in a clinic where there's rotating doctors. And then when you try to get a specialist, you're waiting weeks and weeks and weeks to get the specialist you want, if you even get a specialist. It's very insincere.
What would be a winning message for these candidates?
To say, let's try to keep the healthcare system intact. Let's keep what works. Let's try to build on it. Let's try to fix it and plug the holes and get everybody at least basic coverage. But talking about keeping your doctor is ingenuous. It's political rhetoric. It's not happening now, and it's not going to happen no matter what plan we see. So patients hear it. They don't believe it.
Very important and very interesting stuff. Dr. Mark Siegel, thank you.
Thanks, Sandra.
All right.
Thank you, Doc. In a moment here, live to the White House. This is a significant day in the Rose Garden. President Trump about to sign the 9/11 victim compensation bill into law. He will be surrounded by first responders there. That will get started any moment, and we will take you there live. Also today, police searching for a possible second suspect after a deadly shooting in California. What police are already telling us this morning, that's coming up next.
This is one of those press conferences you never want to have to give in your community. And it's sort of a nightmare that you hope you never have to live in reality. But unfortunately, we find ourselves in this circumstances where we have to live this today.
We are just moments away from President Trump signing the bill to extend the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom Monday morning. I'm Sandra Smith.
Happy Monday to you. Happy to great weekend, right?
You too.
I love it. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. He will be joined by more than 200 survivors, first responders, and victims' family members of the attacks of 2001. The bill will reauthorize medical funding through the year 2092 for those sickened due to exposure to dust and smoke at Ground Zero. To the Rose Garden on a beautiful day at the White House in Washington. Let's begin this hour with John Roberts. John, good morning.
Bill, good morning to you. We expect the president out here very shortly. We hear that the event is running on time schedule for 10 o'clock. These things typically go about 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer late. But a really heartfelt day here in the Rose Garden for this reauthorization of the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund, which is now known as the Never Forget the Heroes Fund, also named for 3 first responders who have died from illnesses that they contracted from working on the pile so long ago. Initially, James Zadroga, who was an NYPD detective, as well Raymond Pfeiffer, who was a New York City firefighter who died in May of 2017, and most recently Luis Alvarez, who gave such compelling testimony before Congress in the last couple of months. He died from cancer during the month of June. What's also really interesting about this, and Bill, this is a long history to get to where we are today. This bill needed reauthorization every few years or so. It was initially officially enacted in the months after 9/11, but would need congressional reauthorization. And then they started to pare money from it. There were caps that were put in place. Jon Stewart, the former Daily Show host and comedian, was so outraged by it that he came down with Luis Alvarez and many other first responders and literally lambasted members of Congress, saying that it was unconscionable that they would not fund this victims' compensation fund. So Congress, through an act by the House and then the Senate, passed by overwhelming majorities, authorized payments to these victims of 9/11, the first responders, through, as you mentioned, 2092. Just to give you an idea of how much money is involved here, $10.3 billion authorized over the next 10 years. And what we've got now, with so many thousands of people who were working on the pile in the weeks after and the months after 9/11, some 22,500 people are involved here. So this money is going to go a long way to helping those who are suffering so horribly from the maladies, everything from lung diseases to cancer. Will be compensation for the families as well. But, you know, nothing ever replaces a loved one. So for many of these people, it's going to be bittersweet. But and James Field, who was also involved with Jon Stewart, he is a demolition expert who worked on the pile for a long, long time, came down here with Jon Stewart, and it was part of that group that was pressuring Congress into passing money to fully fund the Victims' Compensation Fund. He says that even now, even though they've got the money, there's a real bittersweet taste in his mouth because this should have been handled a long time ago. And these people cannot figure out why Congress ever let this whole thing lapse, Bill. So while there is thankfulness here today that this is getting funded and that people who are suffering so horribly and their families will be compensated, the fact that it took what it took to get to where we are today still has left them somewhat unsatisfied, Bill.
John, thank you. We're watching it from here. John Roberts from the Rose Garden. Back to you shortly. Thank you, John.
President Trump, meanwhile, making a big change to his national security team. Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats submitting his resignation. That's effective August 15th. President Trump nominating Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe to replace him. Let's bring in the America's Newsroom A-team. Marianne Marsh, a former senior advisor to John Kerry. Lauren Claffey, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at Homeland Security. And Bill McGurn, a columnist for the Wall Street Journal, former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and Fox News contributor. Bill, I'll start with you first, and good morning to everyone. Right. Bill, what does this change-up mean for the Trump administration? Well,
he's had his difficulties with the intelligence community. I mean, John Ratcliffe is a perfectly capable man, former U.S. attorney. So, you know, I don't anticipate big changes, especially given the job of what the DNI does. You know, it's more administrative.
Lauren?
Yeah, you know, I think John Ratcliffe he comes from a conservative district, and so he's receiving a lot of criticism right now that he may be too pro-Trump or anti-intel and those types of things. But speaking to some of his colleagues on the Hill this morning, I mean, everyone has amazing things to say about John and the work that he's done, and especially the role that he's taken on the Homeland Security Committee, and also his previous role as a U.S. attorney who worked on counterterrorism cases. So this isn't a space that he's unfamiliar with. And, you know, like Bill said, it is an administrative role that's mostly collecting and consolidating intelligence reports from the different agencies. And so he'll be able to lend a prosecutor's eye, I think, to the efficiencies that are needed to improve that department.
So much of this cannot escape politics time and time again. Elizabeth Warren says about Ratcliffe, from day one, Trump has made his disdain for the intelligence community clear. Our director of national intelligence should be above partisan politics, speak truth to power, and resist Trump's abuses of authority. John Ratcliffe doesn't fit that bill. Ratcliffe said this late last night: I'm deeply grateful to the president for the opportunity to lead our nation's intelligence community and work on behalf of all the public servants who are tirelessly devoted to defending the security and safety of the United States. One last comment on this, Marianne. John Ratcliffe has been on the leading edge of looking at the origins of the investigation of the Trump campaign from the very beginning. He fits this job for the president, clearly.
It's more about protecting Trump than America, and here's why.
Perhaps investigating how it all began.
Well, here's the connection, right? John Ratcliffe has been all over the Investigate the Investigators. Who's doing that right now? Bill Barr. So Donald Trump has consolidated his control over the intelligence committees at a time when he's given Bill Barr unprecedented access and control over all the intelligence information, which we've never seen by an attorney general before. Now he adds Ratcliffe. So this is Trump locking down the intelligence community for his purposes, not national security purposes.
All right, just want to alert us. We're watching this on the left hand, or the bottom right of your screen there. The Rose Garden. We're told the vice president has just walked out. We're waiting on the president to sign this 9/11 compensation fund bill. Meanwhile, Bill, respond to Marianne and take that one on, because John Ratcliffe last week, as we saw, he was given an opportunity in that Mueller hearing, and he took it to show his legal chops in defending the president.
Right, and I think he made good points. Look, it's not clear. What are you protecting the president from in terms of intelligence? The committee found that there was no collusion and so forth. So what if you're going after the what are you protecting him from? There's no threat to President. What the threat is now, as Marianne rightly put it, is the investigators and whether they corrupted the process. There are a lot of questions about it, and the answers may look very different when we get the IG report, probably in the autumn. And the IG report is going to be written by an Obama appointee, Mr. Horowitz, so it's not going to be someone protecting the president.
Let's move on to the news of the day from Fox News Sunday. Here's Mick Mulvaney talking about the impeachment charge led on behalf of House Democrats. That number went up over the weekend, by the way. Here's Mulvaney.
Nadler actually told people he has begun an impeachment inquiry. He is falling over himself to become more and more progressive in order to try and keep his job and not lose to the next AOC. No, this is not over in their minds, which is just bizarre given what happened this week. Mueller answered the single one outstanding question. He said, they asked him, would you have indicted the president if he were not the president? And Mueller said, absolutely not. He would not do that.
So to Marianne, you're at 107, so you're 11 short of a simple majority among House Democrats. The point he's making is that people like Jerry Nadler are facing a primary battle in deep blue districts around New York City. And Nadler's responding to that pressure on behalf, I think her name is Laura Boylan. She's from the Upper West Side here in Manhattan. How much of that is influencing Nadler's pursuit?
I don't think it's influencing his personal pursuit as the chairman of this committee. This is about getting the evidence and information that this committee and others still don't have.
He feels very personal, he says, and this is about developing evidence. Here's Jerry Nadler himself on that.
My personal view is that he richly deserves impeachment. He has done many impeachable offenses. He's violated the law 6 ways from Sundays. But that's not the question. The question is, can we develop enough evidence to put before the American people?
So obviously a couple things stood out there. My personal view, and can we develop enough evidence?
Versus as chairman and versus Pelosi. So what is he looking for? Two things. He's looking for the grand jury testimony that Mueller has that they have not seen.
Lauren.
Hold on, one more thing they're looking for, unsealed indictments. The only way you get them is if Bill Barr releases them or you start this process. And if that evidence comes out, we're off to the races.
He's not going to stop.
This is such a dead horse. I mean, or do we just keep beating it and beating it? I mean, it's done. The American people, besides very far left people, are done seeing this. They've made up their decisions. And I think that's why you have Pelosi constantly saying, like, we need to take this carefully. We need to focus the House investigations on other aspects of Trump's business finances and other things, because she knows that they won the House majority on the backs of moderates, swing districts, Trump's districts that maybe Trump won, and then there was a flip because of independent voters, an increase in independent voters in some of those districts. So she's looking at that and maintaining the majority, not necessarily appeasing the far left of her party. And it's also giving Trump and the Republicans much more ammunition against painting the party as out of touch with everyone.
Pause you right there, only because we're seeing the president come to the podium. Rose Garden we go now.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Please sit down. Very important day, and we're gathered this morning at the White House to honor our solemn duty to America's best, bravest, and finest, who I know so well. In a few moments, I will sign a bipartisan bill to fully reauthorize the 9/11 victims' compensation fund. So the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund is something you've all worked on very hard, and the day has come. Today, we come together as one nation to support our September 11th heroes, to care for their families, and to renew our eternal vow, never ever forget. Before I go further this morning, we express our deepest sadness and sorrow for the families who lost a precious loved one in the horrific shooting last night in Gilroy, California. While families were spending time together at a local festival, a wicked murderer opened fire and killed 3 innocent citizens, including a young child. We grieve for their families, and we ask that God will comfort them with His overflowing mercy and grace. We're praying for those who are recovering right now in the hospital, some very, very serious injuries. We thank the brave members of law enforcement, they never let us down, who swiftly killed the shooter. We reaffirm our national will to answer violence with the courage, determination, and resolve of one American family. We will continue to work together as communities and as citizens to stop evil, prevent violence, and protect the safety of all Americans. We're joined for today's ceremony by our wonderful Vice President, Mike Pence. Thank you, Mike, very much. Thank you. Along with many distinguished guests, I want to begin by recognizing a leader many of you know very well. On September 11th, he declared the city of New York and the United States of America is much stronger than any group of barbaric terrorists. Our strength and our willingness to defend ourselves will ultimately prevail, and he was right. A great mayor of the city of New York, our greatest mayor, in my opinion. Now, what do I know? Rudy Giuliani. Stand up, Rudy. Great job, Rudy. Great job. Rudy's got a lot of guts. Thanks also to Deputy Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen for being here. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. Along with Senator Deb Fischer and Representatives Michael Burgess, Chris Collins, Brian Fitzpatrick, Peter King, John Joyce, Mark Meadows, and Dan Muser. Please stand up, fellas, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. In the wake of the September 11th attacks, courageous Americans raced into smoke, fire, and debris in Lower Manhattan, the Pentagon, and a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The whole world witnessed the might and resilience of our nation in the extraordinary men and women of the New York Fire Department and the New York Police Department, selfless patriots of unmatched character and devotion. I grew up with them, so I can tell you that's absolutely true. It's always nice to really know your subject. I know that subject. These are great people. We also commemorate the heroes of the Port Authority Police, and I want to thank you all for being here. Tremendous people. The first responders from across the country rushed to New York and worked endless days and sleepless nights. They fought to rescue every person trapped in the rubble and then searched for months to find the remains of the fallen. The love and loyalty of our 9/11 responders knew no bounds. Today, we are deeply honored to be in the presence of more than 60 of these exceptional heroes. They answered terror with the emotional strength of true American warriors. Would every 9/11 responder please stand up, please? All you first responders, wow. Great. Thank you. Thank you, fellas. Great-looking group of people you are. Great-looking group of people. Thank you very much. You inspire all of humanity, and you know that. We're also greatly moved to have with us families of our fallen heroes. Our nation owes each of you a profound debt that no words or deeds will ever repay. But we can and we will keep our nation's promise to you. In a few moments, I will sign the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. This law makes permanent the financial support for families who lost precious loved ones as a result of September 11th attacks. It also provides pensions for those who are suffering from cancer and other illnesses stemming from the toxic debris. they were exposed to in the aftermath of the attacks. Many of those affected were firefighters, police officers, and other first responders. And I was down there also, but I'm not considering myself a first responder. But I was down there. I spent a lot of time down there with you. Since September 11th, we have lost more than 2,000 first responders and survivors to 9/11 related cancers and illnesses. Currently, thousands of men and women are battling cancer and other illnesses due to 9/11. We pledge to stand by the families of those affected today and every day. We will stand with you. I want to thank lawmakers in both parties for working with common purpose to pass this vital and critical legislation. Here with us for this signing ceremony are the three families whose loved ones are memorialized in the title of this bill. New York Police Department Detective James Zadroga spent more than 450 hours serving at Ground Zero. In 2006, James died from a lung disease. To his father, Joseph, and his daughter, Tyler Ann, who join us, Detective Zadroga's heroism will uplift our nation forever. It won't be forgotten. We will always remember what he did for us. Please stand up, please. Please, thank you. Thank you very much. Also present today is the family of East Meadow volunteer firefighter Ray Pfeiffer. I know East Meadow very well. Great place, great people. For 8 months, Ray worked constantly at Ground Zero. In 2017, at the age of 59, he died from cancer. Here with us today is Ray's wife, Karen, his daughter, Taylor, and his son, Terrence, now a New York City firefighter. Please stand up. Good. Very good. Thank you. And I know Ray must be watching over you, looking down right now from heaven on this beautiful rose garden. Very, very proud of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. The third namesake of the bill is New York City Detective Luis Alvarez. Last month, his powerful testimony in Congress touched the heart of our nation. A few days later, he passed from this life into eternity. We are privileged to have with us Detective Alvarez's brother, Philip, and his wife, Aileen, and his sons, Tyler and Ben. Please stand. Please. Please, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want each of you to know that America is holding you in the arms of its wonderful, wonderful heart. And we're all grieving by your side. Our whole nation prays and pays tribute to the incredible life and legacy of Detective Alvarez, how hard he worked and how much he suffered. And we really want to thank him. He was really something. People understood it very well. It's really great. Thank you. We have an obligation, and it's a sacred obligation to the families and first responders of 9/11. Here with us today is Chief John Joyce, former fire chief of the Midtown Manhattan Firehouse. On September 11th, 15 of his men raced into the ashes of hell and gave their lives. To this day, Chief Joyce still mentors many of their 28 children. Chief Joyce spent 7 months working at Ground Zero. In 2011, he was diagnosed with cancer. He has also endured other severe 9/11 related illnesses, but the chief is a fighter. He is definitely a fighter. As he says, because of this bill, he does not have to fear for the families of his firehouse whose loved ones made the ultimate sacrifice. Chief Joyce, you have our everlasting gratitude. Please, Chief. Thank you. Good. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for being here. And say hello to everybody. To every 9/11 hero, you poured out your heart, your sweat, your soul, and everything you had for your country. You ran toward the wreckage into a ball of flames like, frankly, nobody in this country had ever seen. You searched for survivors. You went back day after day and night after night to save lives and return the fallen to their families, to rebuild and recover, and to show the entire world that nothing will ever break America's spirit. Over the last 2 decades, you have endured hardship with amazing grace and incredible grit. Through it all, you care, and you work, and you love, and you will always remember all of those great families. You lift up our communities, and you remind us all what it means to stand united as one nation under God. For your entire lives, you have gone far beyond your duty to us, and today we strive to fulfill our sacred duty to you. We love you, we honor you, and we thank you. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm going to sign this bill into law, and I don't know if this stage will hold it, but if it doesn't, we're not falling very far. But I'd like to ask the families, and I'd also like to ask the first responders to come up, and we'll give this stage a shot. Let's see how well built, made in America. Let's see how well built it is. Okay, come on up. Thank you very much. Watch out for the camera.
So normally we would see some of these individuals take the microphone, which might be the case. So we're just going to stay with the shot for a moment. And as you can see, Sandra, there are a lot of people who have made the trip to Washington today.
An inspiration to all of us, those first responders. Let's watch the president sign the bill.
Senate vote was 98-2. Prior to that, House vote 402-12. And with our panel, just, you're all New Yorkers at heart, we could say, Bill, as we watch this today.
Right. Look, I actually don't think there was a doubt that this was going to be signed. The American people want this. I don't think there's a lot of political divisions. And, it's good to see people coming together for this.
Claims are expected to exceed 22,000 from emergency personnel, Lauren, who worked at Ground Zero on and after 9/11, and many of them breathed in toxic fumes, as the president referenced, some who have passed even in recent days who fought for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's money well spent. I mean, we have to take care of those who took care of us and risked everything. And, I don't think any American, especially after watching what those 2 towers go down, would ever think that this is money that we shouldn't spend and that people that we should not take care of for the rest of their lives and their families.
Little passes by 98-2 anymore, and it's nice to see that this particular bill passed by that margin. We can never do enough to repay everyone who's lost their lives at 9/11, who've lost their lives since. They never should have had to fight for this money, but thank God they have it now. They'll never have to worry about it again.
Personal to him as well.
A New Yorker.
Sure. September 11th, he was here. Yeah. So we wanted to share that with you, and thanks to our panel, Lauren and Bill McGurn and Marianne Marsh. Nice to see you guys on a
great
Monday.
to see you.
Okay, there's the event from the White House, and appropriate enough, Sandra, they get a sun-filled day in the Rose Garden.
Some powerful words for those first responders. The president saying nothing will ever break the American spirit. These first responders inspire all of humanity, said the president. All right, well, that is now signed after a lot of contentious back and forth on that. And meanwhile, we're going to move on. Our A-team, thank you. The search for 2 murder suspects in Canada intensifying after a possible sighting of the teens in the province of Manitoba. Now news that the pair may have changed their appearances. What hurdles will this cause for investigators?
Also, Sandra, President Trump trading fire with Congressman Elijah Cummings. There was an intense back and forth over the weekend. Hello. How it could affect the race for 2020. We'll get reaction from that. Our headliner, Donna Brazil, coming up shortly, right here.
What this is about, though, is the president fighting back against what he saw as being illegitimate attacks about the border. I think the president is right to raise that. It has absolutely zero to do with race.
30 now in New York, a brand new photograph now surfacing showing one of 2 American teenagers accused of brutally murdering a police officer in Rome, Italy, right near the Vatican. Here is that image now showing one of the teenagers illegally blindfolded during preliminary questioning. It's a big story in Italy, a big story in California. Amy Kellogg's live in Milan with the details to fill us in now. Amy, what happened?
Hey, Bill. Well, here in Italy, the funeral for Mario Ceccialarega just took place. It took place in the same church, Bill, where he was married only 43 days ago in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. And an autopsy report today found that he was stabbed, Bill, not 8 times, but 11 times. And an investigating judge on the case says that the knife that was used was not an ordinary knife, but actually one that is typically used by the Marines. Now, Ceccialarega was 35 years old. He was a deputy brigadier in the Carabinieri, which is the military police. He had only just returned from his honeymoon last Monday. 2 American teens have, according to police, confessed to their role in his murder the early hours of Friday. Ceccialarega was 35 and by all accounts a kind man who accompanied the sick to the shrine at Lourdes and helped to feed Rome's homeless each Tuesday night. Now, this twist in the case, which may cause the prosecution trouble, comes from this leaked picture of one of the 2 suspects, Gabriel Christian Natali Yorth, blindfolded and handcuffed in the police station over the weekend. The Prime Minister today said that blindfolding a suspect is illegal. The police involved say they simply did not want Natali Yorth to see some documents that would have been within his sight. Now, finally, police release audio of the call made to them on the night of the murder.